message this morning is about stress and victory, but it's not all about stress. You'll see it's about several different things. And I want you to think about this. If you think about a cat, what do you think has a larger frontal lobe? You think about a cat, 3.5% of its brain is its frontal lobe. What percentage do you think it has a larger or a smaller frontal lobe in comparison by volume to a dog? What do you think would have larger? Dog is larger. Someone said cat. You know, we generally have different opinions, but the science of it actually shows that a dog has about twice as large of a frontal lobe by proportion of its brain. So you think about it. Dogs, you can teach them a lot of tricks. Typically, they come. If you say come, they come. But cats are kind of like a wild animal in the house. Have you noticed that? Like they walk by you and you call your cat, and many times they just look and just go about their business as if you didn't exist, right? But not so with dogs. Dogs actually have a little bit more typically interpersonal communication. And you think about a chimpanzee, and a chimpanzee has a whole 17% of its brain is its frontal lobe. So you see a large intellect growth in that of the chimpanzee. But then going even further, the human being, nearly a third of the human brain is its frontal lobe. Nearly a third of its brain is the frontal lobe. And this distinguishes us or separates us from the typical animals in the animal kingdom. Now, we're talking about the frontal lobe. We're talking about this decision-making center, but there's another portion of the brain that is the emotional center, the center of our sex drive and our desires. And these things are not bad in and of themselves. They're just bad in the wrong context. They're actually good in the right context. And before we go into that, though, I'm going to share with you a study that was done in 1953 in Montreal, Canada. The study was done by two scientists by the name of Olds and Milner. What they did was they were trying to actually look at the fear center of the brain of mice. But through some clumsy handling by the scientists, they were implanting an electrode in what they hoped would be the fear center of the brain. And typically what would happen, as scientists would shock that portion of the brain, it would cause such fear to the mice that they would do anything they could do to avoid that area that they had been shocked in. So if they were shocked right here, they would try to get away, and they would never even want to stand there again, just because of how much fear had come into them through that simple shock. Then, as they shocked this mouse, though, instead of trying to get away from that area, it seemed like it wanted to stay there. So had they found a masochistic mouse? Well, it doesn't seem so. They began to think, hey, have we found something else? Have we plugged it into the wrong spot in the brain? What they discovered that they would shock it, and it seemed to want to stay there. It seemed like it actually liked the shock. They began to push it in, and they thought, I wonder, okay, let's say if we want it to move to the right. Anytime it moves a little to the right, we'll give it a shot. And then it moved to the right, it gets a shock. And then it thinks, and it would do it again. And it started to realize what they wanted. So they would push it to give it this, and they realized they thought that they had found the center of pleasure rather than the center of fear. Well, what ended up happening, they actually got the mouse to the point where they could control it like a joystick, like a video game controller. I don't know that they really have joysticks so anymore. When I was a kid, it was like a stick, like it wasn't all these buttons. It was like a stick with a button, like you could just control the game like that. I'm obviously quite old, huh? You don't have that anymore. But nevertheless, so they actually got to the point where they could literally control this mouse like a joystick. Well, then what they did was they set up a little contraption, a little mechanism whereby the mouse could actually press a lever and self-stimulate. And so once it discovered what that lever did, it pushed it. Oh, that was good, And then it pushes it again. This is great. And then it just starts pushing the lever. Well, what they discovered was, once the mouse discovered that it could push this lever, it would push it over and over and over until it would just collapse, literally. It was just receiving this, pleasure over and over and over, self-stimulating. So the scientists went even further. They set up an electrified grid. This is just my little illustration of what it might have looked like. Obviously, it wasn't like this. This is two-dimensional. It was actually in 3 dimensions. But they had a cage, And on either side of the cage, you had a lever. And you could only press the lever once and receive the self-stimulation. Then you had to run to the other side of the cage, and you could only press it on the other side one time, and then you had to run back. So it'd have to go back and forth to receive the stimulation, and it would figure that out. It would figure, I get one chance, run, one chance, one chance. The trouble was, though, that in order to go across, you had to run across an electrified grid that would cause physical pain and torment to the mouse. So as it would do this, it would go back over and over and over. But this electrified grid was so intense that after a while, after going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, it actually would burn the feet of the mice so much that it would actually not be able to go back and forth anymore. It couldn't move. So it was so interested in this electrified shock that it was willing to destroy its own body just to receive the self-stimulation. Let me ask you a question. Does this sound like addiction to you, yes or no? Meaning you are willing to do whatever it takes to get your fix. Whatever it takes, even if it destroys your body, even if it destroys your relationship with your family and with your friends, whatever it takes. Now, it doesn't have to be an addiction to drugs. It could be a relationship that you really shouldn't be in. You're willing to sacrifice family. You're willing to sacrifice friends for the guy, for the girl, right? It could be whatever it is. It could be an addiction to a substance such as tobacco. It's destroying your body, but to have that self-stimulation again. And could it be that when we get to the point where we are not controlled by the frontal lobe, but are rather controlled by this deeper level drives, that we can get to the point where the devil, in essence, can control us like a joystick? We become his video game. He controls what we do. Now, this is a heavy thought. But in the brain, we have both on the left side, we have the frontal lobe, and you can imagine this is a mirror image of the brain if you turn the brain around on the right side. And here, deeper within the brain, not on the outside, but deeper within the brain, you have something that scientists call the limbic system, the emotional center, the center of the human drives, the drive for food. Well, a drive for food is not a bad drive in and of itself. The question is, do we allow our drives, our tastes, to be governed by the higher intellectual powers of the frontal lobe, or do we just go by the lusts of the flesh? Same thing with sex. Sex is not bad within a marriage context. The Bible says in Hebrews that the marriage bed is undefiled. But the thing is, outside of a marriage context, it brings no peace, it brings no true happiness. It does bring temporary pleasure, but it doesn't bring the ultimate joy that God was intending. So whatever it is, we have these drives, and are we going to live within the limbic system? Will we live by our drives, or will we allow our drives to be governed by the seat of spirituality, morality, and the will? That's the question we need to ask. Now, it's interesting. A neurobiologist, Robert Sapolsky, at Stanford University, has argued that the main job of the modern prefrontal cortex is to bias the brain, and therefore you, toward doing the harder thing. What does he mean? When it's easier to stay on the couch, your prefrontal cortex makes you want to get up and exercise. And when it's easier to put off that project until tomorrow, it's your prefrontal cortex that helps you open up the file and make progress anyway. Now, what does this mean? What he's saying is the main job of the frontal lobe, or specifically the prefrontal cortex, is to help you, to encourage you, to push you on to do the harder thing. Now, it's interesting that doing the harder thing is many times the more fulfilling thing in life. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, for instance, it's easier to just drop out of school, right? It's easier to be like, skip this. I mean, this is so much work. This is ridiculous. So it's easier to just quit. But doing the harder thing, when you actually finish, you feel what? You feel better about it. It's easier to just go around and sleep around, right? It's harder to actually hold ourselves to being pure, but if you do that, it's actually more fulfilling. And even if you've been sleeping around already, you can put a stop to it and choose to turn around until you get married, right? And you can find peace in the years until that comes, and you can kind of reset your life. I mean, one of my best friends, he was sleeping around. He was with, prostitutes and so forth. And finally, when he gave his life to God, he went years before being with another girl. When he finally gave his life to God. And finally, when he married his wife, he was with his wife. And so we can start over even if we've done these things in the past. But the prefrontal cortex or the frontal lobe helps us to do the harder thing. Now, I will suggest to you that Jesus lived by his frontal lobe. That he lived doing the harder thing. And I think the Bible even gives reference to that in 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 1 and 2. And it says, "For as much then as Christ has suffered for us in the flesh," it says, "arm yourselves likewise with the same" what? Mind. "For he that has suffered in the flesh has ceased from sin, that he no longer should live the rest of his time in the flesh to the lusts of men, but to the will of God." It says, Christ has suffered for us in the flesh. And he that suffers in the flesh will cease from sin. In order to overcome sin, we need to suffer in the flesh. So in order to overcome temptations, addictions, bad habits, we need to suffer in the flesh. Fadia and I were doing a seminar in the state of New Mexico, in the United States, southwestern United States. And this woman came to our seminars, and she had been a Jehovah's Witness. And she was a smoker at the time. And she came to the seminar, and she shared with us that she actually had, God had given her the victory over cigarettes in the past. She actually had prayed, and God just took away even the desire to smoke. And she told us, she said, I am not willing to quit smoking until God just takes it away. Now, I want you to think about this just for a moment. Is that a wise way to live your spiritual life? Say, I'm not gonna wrestle, I'm not gonna fight the spiritual fight unless God just takes all the desires for the sin away from me. Do you think that sounds like a good idea? This actually says, on the contrary, we are to, if we're gonna have victory over temptation, have victory over our sins and our lusts, we need to suffer in the flesh. We need to actually find that victory through suffering in the flesh. And so we are to have the same mind as Christ. Was it easy for Jesus to go to the cross? He said to his Father, Father, if it is possible, what? Take this cup from me. Nevertheless, not what I will, but what you will. May your will be done. In the same way, we say, God, listen, please help me to do the harder thing. It would be easier to just keep living in this sin, but when I do the harder thing by your grace, by your strength and your power, I actually find the peace and a joy that passes all understanding. You see, doing the harder thing actually becomes the more fulfilling thing. You know, in that same book I had shared with you a minute ago, Spark, the Revolutionary New Science of Exercise in the Brain, this talks about smoking. But this principle is for any bad habit that you have. It says in smokers, just 5 minutes of intense exercise can be beneficial. Exercise fights the urge to smoke because in addition to smoothly increasing dopamine, it also lowers anxiety, tension, stress, and stress levels. The fact that exercise sharpens thinking comes into play here because one of the withdrawal symptoms of nicotine is impaired focus. So exercise actually helps smokers overcome smoking. It's interesting, they had another group of people it says that researchers found that exercise dramatically reduced withdrawal symptoms in the exercise and morphine group when they cut off the drugs. So people who are addicted to morphine, exercise helped them get off it. So it's true for smokers, for people who are addicted to morphine. We go even further. It says in 2011, researchers from Vanderbilt University did a study published in PLOS ONE that involved making a dozen marijuana users run on treadmills for 30 minutes, 10 times over a 2-week period. These were very heavy marijuana users, and they saw a dramatic drop in their cravings and their use of marijuana, a decrease of more than 50% after just a few exercise sessions. Exercise was the only intervention. What's interesting is that these people were deemed cannabis or marijuana dependent, and they didn't even want treatment to help them to stop smoking pot. The exercise alone made them cut their marijuana use by more than half. You get the idea? These are people who don't even want to stop smoking marijuana. These are people like me. I like smoking pot. I enjoy doing it, and that's just what I want to do. They took these guys who didn't even want to quit, they put them on an exercise program, and within days, it dropped their use of marijuana by 50%, and they didn't even want to quit. You get the idea? So think about this. If it dropped their use by 50%, what do you think it might do for somebody that actually wanted to quit? You understand? So exercise is so thoroughly important. Getting out, especially if you can, in the fresh air, moving your body, get your heart pumping. It actually lowers our tension, our stress levels. It helps us to overcome. But is it easy always to get out and exercise? Many times it's very difficult, but doing the harder thing actually makes us feel better after the fact. It actually makes us feel better. My wife is going to come up and she's going to tell us about Nurse Patricia, who had a frontal lobotomy.
Phineas Gage and what it told us about the frontal lobe based on his experience of having an accidental lobotomy. Well, Nurse Patricia is our next subject, and she struggled with depression. And she hoped that a frontal lobotomy would help her with her guilt. Now, this is not a way I'd recommend for us to deal with our guilt, right? There's much better ways. Turning to God is a really good way, but she had severe depression, and so she struggled with it. And you know, guilt is a blessing. If we didn't have guilt, we would continue in the wrong path, right? It's kind of like pain in our fingers. If we didn't have pain in our fingers, we'd lose the whole hand because we wouldn't know, oh, this is hot, don't touch it. This is sharp, don't, handle it that way. But because we have pain, we have our limitations, right? We know what we can do and we can't do. And so the same thing with guilt. Guilt kind of puts us in check, right? It gets us to turn to our Savior. That's the whole point of it, is to get us to turn to our Savior. Because, and God doesn't want us to get callous towards that, right? And so the Holy Spirit works through that to turn us to Jesus. So she decided that a frontal lobotomy would help her with her guilt. So before the surgical procedure, she was an extremely efficient operating room nurse, which is a good thing. And she enjoyed reading, which is another good thing. But afterwards, she lost much of her ambition. She had loss of sympathy and interest in her work. She lost interest in books, and you'd find her saying things like, "I don't care if I make a mistake. It'll turn out all right in the end." Is that a way you want an OR nurse speaking? No. It was a good thing that she was an efficient nurse beforehand, right? This who cares kind of attitude is not going to run in the OR. And then she lost interest in books. And books, when you read them, it's where you do really critical thinking, right? You're thinking about what you're reading. She lost that ability. So there's blessings in this frontal lobe. And sometimes when we're dealing with so much guilt, we think we try. And, she did this extreme thing, but sometimes we do things too to shut down the effects of the frontal lobe, right? Because we can't handle reality. And so it could be a substance, it could be food, it could be whatever, media, whatever, to drown out the effects of the frontal lobe because we can't handle it. But God's given us a way. He wants us to be people who utilize the spirituality, morality, and the will, right? Utilize this portion of the brain. It's a blessing. So we told you that normally, we do one meeting a night. And so each day we tell you what to add to the modified cleanse fast. And so the second day, you're to add veggies, okay? You add vegetables to the fast. And you don't do it at the same meal that you do your fruits. You do fruits for one meal, and then you do your veggies for another meal. And try to have something you don't really like. Have you ever noticed if you're fasting, try something new so that maybe your taste buds will change at that time and you'll start to enjoy it. And I'm talking about something that's good for you, Try to do that. Trying to think of what else to say about this. If it comes to me, I'll share it with you later. But that's just how it goes. So the first day, you do fruit, right? And water. And then the second day, you add vegetables to the diet. But then, remember, we had like diabetics and things like that. They did the fruit, bread, veggies, and water so that their blood sugars wouldn't go up and down. Okay. I have a question for you. How long does the average craving last? Can anybody tell me? What's that? 30 seconds? Anybody else? Wow, this is a shy group. Okay, so you're right. Anywhere from 30 seconds to 3 minutes. Okay? That's how long the average craving lasts. 30 seconds to 3 minutes. It's pretty good. I don't know that I've ever had anybody like, boom, right away. 30 seconds. Some people joke and they say, all day. But isn't it a blessing? Chad was just talking about doing the harder thing. And so when these cravings come, a lot of times we fall into the instant gratification mode, right? I want to instantly gratify my craving instead of thinking through it and claiming Bible promises, talking to God, turning you know, what were the other things we said to do? Drink your water, right? Get up, remove yourself from the situation and start walking. Make sure you've got good posture so you're breathing deeply and getting enough oxygen to your brain so you're making good decisions, and then talking to God about it. So these things all help us. So during that craving, we have ways to escape the temptation, right? God has made ways for us to escape these temptations. We don't have to be victims of our desires. So there's traps, right? And what do we do with these traps? Okay. I'm about to play something on the audio, so just giving a heads up. Oh. All right. So this is a video from the news that we have, and I'll show it to you in just a moment. But here's one of the traps. Wow, caffeine. Whoever knew that that would be a trap? Yes, it is. And let's listen here, and then we'll talk about it.
As you likely know, we've reported often here
Sorry.
on World News, but the powerful effects of coffee and a growing body of research telling us in the right amounts, it can help us focus better and even fend off some disease later in life. But we ask tonight, what is it really doing to our brains? ABC's Lisa Stark with her own MRIs before and after.
It's the most popular drug in the world. I need that little boost. It's everywhere, from 320 milligrams in the Starbucks Cafe Grande, about the max you should have in a day, to energy drinks, to sodas, now even inhalable, 100 milligrams in an instant. But could that daily dose of caffeine be changing your brain? We turned to researchers in Wake Forest in North Carolina, where I underwent 2 MRI brain scans. This first scan with no caffeine in my system. Then I downed just 1 drink. Now my second MRI. This was my brain before caffeine. This was after. The difference was remarkable.
It's like a 40% drop in the blood flow to your brain. So that's a lot.
So before caffeine, with caffeine, the blood flow to my brain dropped
Went
about
down
40%.
40%.
Really?
Yes.
Why the drop? Caffeine blocks a chemical called adenosine, which controls blood flow to the brain. Add caffeine, blood vessels constrict, less blood circulates in the brain, and your blood pressure and heart rate go up. So if you skip your regular coffee, that surging blood can trigger a caffeine headache.
It's like trying to get a fire hose to pump blood up through your skull.
If you're a caffeine lover, your brain has actually changed. It now functions normally on caffeine.
How much caffeine do I have to drink to change the physiology of my brain?
Not very much.
Not very much, like even a
One
cup
cup
a
a
day.
day will change your brain.
The good
Wow. Isn't that interesting? Just 1 cup a day can change your brain physically. and you become totally addicted to this substance. And you know what's interesting? It's no different than somebody who starts to smoke. You know, when a person first smokes, they feel this buzz, and that's what they like. But guess what they have to do to continue to have that buzz? Increase the amount you smoke. It's no different with caffeine. You have to, just to start, at first you get that buzz, right? That awake feeling. But then guess what? After a while, just to feel normal, like what people normally feel like, you have to keep drinking it just to feel normal. So you're not getting that extreme, but now you're just like wiped out and just feel normal. You have to take it. And so people say, but it gives me energy. I can't get up in the morning without it. It's not true. It's taking your vitality. It's taking energy that you don't have. And it's kind of like breaking the fatigue light in your body. Your body's telling you you're fatigued, you're tired, slow down, take it easy. And you're just turning off the fatigue light. You're not really giving yourself energy. You're just telling your brain, no, I'm not tired. I'm going to keep going. And so you wear yourself out. And did you notice another thing? So it decreases the amount of blood flow to the brain. So do you think that we're more susceptible to temptation because we're not getting the blood flow to the part of our bodies that needs it the most to make good decisions, right? And another thing, it said that it increases your heart rate and your blood pressure. Didn't Chad say that when you're tempted, your heart rate increases, your blood pressure increases, your breathing becomes shallow, right? It's kind of like it's putting you in this tempted mode, right, where you're not getting the blood flow. And so this is just to encourage us to think about these things. This is not to put anybody down for you know, whatever habits you have. We're not here for putting people down. We're here to educate and encourage, to do the better thing, the harder thing, right? As Jesus did the harder thing for us. And these traps are the most common ones. Maybe you've got other things that you're dealing with that are traps, but these are the most common ones that people have, and that's what we're addressing. Another common trap is idleness, okay? If you think about it, a lot of times when you fall into your temptation, it's usually during times of idleness. And if right now, as I'm speaking, if you think about your temptations, you think like, that's true. I do fall into it when I got nothing better to do and I'm just wasting time. Think about King David, okay? Think about King David. During the springtime, the kings were to go out and fight with their men. That's what they did. They went out and fought with their men. This particular spring, King David thought, oh, I'll just chill at the castle and not go out with my men. So he's got nothing better to do. He's just chilling, and he goes on a website he shouldn't have gone on, right? He went somewhere he shouldn't have gone. Just started kind of looking, bored out of his mind because he's not doing what he was supposed to be doing, and just starts looking somewhere he shouldn't look. And next thing we know, a man is killed, a baby's born, a baby dies, and the kingdom starts to go downward. All because of idleness. Isn't that interesting? And so we have to really realize, and this is not to promote, not alcoholism, but workaholic, like making people workaholics, right? We're not promoting that, no. But we are promoting that you utilize your time well, and you have moments of recreation, you know. The body needs that rest, and then times of hard work and so on and so forth. So we all know what idleness is for each of us. All right, another trap, sugar. Ooh, that's a tough one, isn't it? So, sugar also affects us in many ways. It says researchers point to studies that show that too much sugar not only makes us fat, it also wreaks havoc on our liver, mucks up our metabolism, impairs brain function, and may leave us susceptible to heart disease, diabetes, and even cancer. It's all from sugar. It's also a trap because it's become prevalent in our society today. Sugar's in everything, even in packaged foods that you don't really need sugar in. How about this one for a trap? Keeping it around, all right? Whatever that may be. If you know you struggle with something, during that time when you're really trying to overcome, you need to remove, if you are able to, remove this object from your life. Okay? Let's say it's food, unhealthy food, I should say. The battle begins in the grocery store. Okay? You have to make that choice in the grocery store. Avoid certain aisles if need be, right? Avoid certain aisles and say, I'm not going to go down that aisle right now. I need to strengthen myself. I'm weak right now, and I'm going to strengthen myself by avoiding this right now and trying to do the right thing. And this is especially true if you're going to try the fast, the modified fast that we're talking about. It's a good time to encourage yourself in doing that. Once you start it, stick to it. So, like I said, it begins in the grocery store. But let's say it's cigarettes somebody's trying to give up. It's a good example to use. And people think, well, just in case I get a craving that I just can't resist, I'm going to have this as a backup. Right? I'm going to have it there and I'll go. But what you're telling your brain is that it's an option. Right? You're telling yourself that's an option if I get into trouble. But what did we say to do? Drink your water, get up and move, exercise, try these things, change your brain to thinking in a new path. Start talking to God about it. Claim those promises. Have them with you. Find something that you can relate to in the Bible and then just pull it out and look at it. Make it a new good habit. And then also, like doing that deep breathing. When that craving comes, just start doing that. Move around and claim God's promises. Talk to him. In Romans 13, verse 14, it says, put you on the Lord Jesus Christ and make not provision for the flesh to fulfill the lusts thereof. So don't keep things around, because what are you doing? You know the flesh is weak. God knows the flesh is weak. So he says, don't make provision for it. Don't put yourself in the way of temptation, because you're going to fall, right? And so don't think that you can handle it, because we're weak, right? And we need to realize that. But what about some traps that you don't always have control over? Things like a stressful place or a situation, right? A particular person could be a trap for you, or a repetitive memory, something happened to you back who knows when, right? And you get flashbacks and you go over it and over it, or woulda, coulda, shoulda, and you go over it and over it. You just beat yourself up. Or like I said, a particular person. It could be a family member. It could be a coworker. It could be your boss. What have you. And some of these things are a little harder to deal with, these traps, right? But God can give us the victory. Chad's going to come up later and explain that a little more. But like I said, we're going to repeat this over and over, because repetition deepens impression. So drink your water, get out and walk, do your breathing, and then your Bible promises and prayer. I'll skip over some of this stuff here and let Chad come up and continue the thought here.
All right, we are going to move into some of the effects of stress. As we said, there's beneficial stress and negative stress. We're going to talk about this. They did a study looking at 2 different types of stress and their effects on people. And they looked at what we call acute stress. Now, acute stress occurs when a threatening event appears, then is quickly resolved. And your body is well designed to handle acute stress. In fact, your body can even benefit from stress much in the same way that exercise works. Acute stress can help you become stronger, so you're better prepared physically for future emergencies. I'll give you an example. I like to exercise, and I was going for a run back in the state of, actually outside of Chicago. And I was going for a run, and then I heard a dog barking, and I looked to my left, and there was a Rottweiler. You know what a Rottweiler is? Those are big dogs. And I looked at it, and it had a chain on, but it did this little move where it went like this, and the chain fell off. And then it started running after the running target, which was me. And so I'm running but I know you don't run from a dog. And so I stop, and the dog comes right at me, and as it's coming at me, I said, stop! Trying to act like I'm not afraid, but I'm afraid. And so I'm trying to yell at the dog or whatever, and my heart rate increases, my blood pressure increases, and my breathing rate becomes more shallow. You get nervous. Well, praise the Lord, the owner of the dog came out, grabbed the dog, took the dog away. Now, the thing is, that was acute stress. It came on rapidly, it was stressful, it was physiologically stressful, but it also went away quickly. I went on with my run, and for the rest of the day, I wasn't thinking, maybe there's a dog, maybe there's a dog, maybe there's, you understand what I'm saying? I was done with it, it was gone. Now, the second kind of stress is called chronic stress, which happens when the event remains constantly on your mind and does not go away. This can harm you because your body has no recovery phase during which to rest and rebuild. The lack of downtime both depletes your body's reserves and postpones long-term rebuilding, which causes the premature deterioration of major organ systems. Serious illness and even death may result. So what they're saying is, something that stays constantly on your mind that you go over and over and over and over can actually destroy your health physically. It actually physiologically can impact your health. They did another study with 2 groups, 30 volunteers, and the first group, they made them watch a 12-minute gruesome surgical procedure. Now, if you're a doctor and you're a surgeon, that would not be very stressful. You're used to that all the time. That's day in, day out work. It's not a big deal. But for the rest of us who aren't looking at blood and guts, it can be kind of stressful to look at that stuff. So, number 2, they had a group of people memorize information and take a 12-minute test. Well, what was the result? So both groups, it was 12 minutes. One of the groups was doing something that was actively stressful. They were actively trying to accomplish a goal, actively taking the test. Now, what was the result? We read here, it says, during the experiments, each person gave saliva samples that were analyzed for immune system components known as secretory proteins. It says, these proteins help protect the lining of organs such as the lungs and stomach, guarding against the invasion of bacteria and viruses. While levels of secretory proteins increase during active stress, the immune response actually dropped during passive stress. So what they're saying is that when people were actively involved in doing something, when it was stressful, because are you ever stressed when you have to take a test? Yeah, probably many of us are. But you're actively going forth to do it. And when you're actively participating, you actively studied, and then you actively take the test, there's actually a benefit to your immune system. Whereas when you just have to sit back and receive stress, it actually can be negatively impacting to your body. Well, they go on to say perhaps stress is not the big bad thing everybody is thinking it is. In fact, most acute stressors boost the immune system. Only when the stress is unusually prolonged or repetitive that it becomes a potential threat to an individual's health. So it's when you go over and over something, and that's the thing, many people have gone through issues in life. Maybe somebody was mean to you, and you go over and over it, over and over it. Maybe somebody was abused, and they go over and over and over, and God wants to set us free because these things can actually destroy our health. We're going to talk later on about how to, not in this message, we're going to talk later on about how to actually overcome in these areas. But science is showing more and more that the mind and the body are linked. Now, the Bible has always told us that the mind and the body are linked, but science is coming out to show us this. You may remember the old verse from Proverbs that says, a merry heart does good like a medicine, but a broken spirit dries the bones. The Bible talks about the fact that the mind and the body are linked. But certain emotions release hormones into the body that in turn can trigger the development of a host of diseases. Researchers have directly and scientifically linked emotions to hypertension, cardiovascular disease, and diseases related to the immune system. Studies have also highly correlated emotions with infections, allergies, and autoimmune diseases. All these things can be affected by the emotions that you have. We see that specifically research has linked emotions such as depression to an increase in developing cancer and heart disease. Emotions such as anxiety and fear may have shown a direct tie to heart palpitations, mitral valve prolapse, irritable bowel syndrome, and tension headaches, as well as other diseases. So just thinking that so many of these diseases that people have, and one of the contributing factors can be their literal emotional state. And so, how do they come about with these issues? Well, there's several things that can cause chronic or prolonged stress. Number one is past event that continues to go through your mind. You go over and over and over something that took place in your past. Maybe you hate your present life. I hate my job. I hate school. I hate this. I hate that, whatever it is. Those things can actually be a detriment to your health. Also, a lack of forgiveness, holding on to what somebody did to you last month, last year, 30 years ago. I mean, we have seen people who have been holding on to issues for 40 years, just holding on to anger over these issues, and it literally can destroy your life. And maybe being in an unhealthy relationship. You're going out with a guy, you're going out with a girl you should not be with. It causes stress in your life. And these are things to let go of, to literally just say, hey, I'm going to let go. I'm going to do what God is calling me to do. I'm going to break this thing off. I need to let go of this. And, I read some time ago about 2 Vietnam veterans. The United States went to that war. It was a horrible war. And some of the guys were thrown into a concentration camp. And one of the men, they were both in this concentration camp, tortured, went through the trials there. And one of them, later on, after they got out, he asked the other, he said, hey, have you forgiven your captors yet? And the other responded by saying, no, I will never forgive them. And the other responded by saying, then I guess they still have you captive, don't they? That's really something to think about. We think when we don't forgive, we're getting back at somebody else, right? Like we're hurting them. But the reality is it's actually hurting us. It's actually destroying us by holding on to that negative emotion. This is very powerful. There's a man by the name of Gene Warr, W-A-R-R. He was actually an American man who became a successful millionaire, and owned different businesses. And this man was also a soldier in World War II. He's passed away now. But this man also was a big believer in Bible memorization. He loved to memorize Scripture. And he tells a story of how it was actually studied during the Korean War, when the United States was at war with Korea. During the Korean conflict, during that time period, someone set out to study what were some of the things, what were some of the characteristics that made certain people crack in these times of terrible physical and emotional persecution. Because some people are thrown into a concentration camp and they just crumble under the weight of this trial. But other people, they are able to make it through. Other people are able to, stand strong in the midst of torture and trials. Well, what did they discover? What Gene Warr shared is that 2 of the things they discovered that made men less likely to crack under physical torture and emotional trauma was, number 1, they noticed that those who were less likely to crack had strong moral and religious convictions. And number 2, and I find this fascinating, he said they found that those who were less likely to crack under this, physical trauma, emotional trauma, were those who had memorized Bible verses and would go over them in their mind. Isn't that interesting? If these men who, under torturous circumstances, if under the trial of torture and the emotional trauma, physical starvation, not even having enough food, if these men found that Bible memory verses could help them to overcome, do you think that those same things could potentially help us in our time of trial? Yes or no? Absolutely. Now, I'm not just talking about the last day, time of trouble. Yes, we need it for that time period. Absolutely we do. But we even need it to overcome our temptations today in 2016. That as we come upon, stressful events, as we come upon temptation, as we have negative, repetitive memories come back to our mind, we can go back time and again to the Word of God to find victory over the temptations that we have. If they found that this was something beneficial to prisoners of war, could this also be for us? Absolutely. Now I'm going to give you a quick illustration here. How many of you like the taste of lemon? You like lemons? I do too. I like the taste of lemons. And imagine with me just for a moment that you had a lemon in your hand. Just imagine it with me. And you cut it in half and you smell it. How's it smell? It smells wonderful, fresh, right? Clean. It smells really good. And maybe it even makes your mouth start watering, right? Just imagining the taste of that. And if you were to take it and you were to squeeze it and you were to dump it down, into your mouth and just have that intensely sweet, not even sweet, totally sour, that sour sensation in your mouth that just tastes wonderful. Now, if I tell you, stop thinking about lemons. If I said, do not think at all about lemons, don't think about the yellow citrus fruit. What happens? You think about lemons, right? But 2 minutes ago, you weren't even thinking about lemons. Now you're thinking about them, right? And when I tell you don't think about them, you think about, they've actually done scientific studies looking at this. They call it thought suppression. And they have found that it is extremely difficult. It was like Tolstoy or one of these men from the past. His brother stuck him in the corner of a room, and he said, do not leave this corner until you stop thinking about the purple teddy bear. And guess what? Every time he thought about leaving the corner, guess what came to his mind? A purple teddy bear. And he wasn't even thinking about a purple teddy bear before that, right? And thought suppression is very difficult. Science is even showing us this. But here's the thing. Now, let me ask you a question. How many of you like apples? Anybody like apples? What's your favorite kind of apple? Pink lady. Anybody else? I just hear you. I'm sure you all said it, but I couldn't hear what you said. How about, and you guys ever have a Honeycrisp? They don't have them here, maybe. Honeycrisp are amazing. They're just absolutely phenomenal. But there's all kinds, maybe like Granny Smith, or I had some ones that were just called British apples while we've been here. I don't know if that's an actual special kind of apple, British apple. Maybe it is, but I had some of those. And I had some others. The first apple somebody gave me on this trip, they were fantastic. I don't even know what they were. I wish I did. They weren't in a bag, so I just ate them. But I love fruit, and they were phenomenal. So what are we thinking about now? Apples. Here's the thing. When you choose to think about something else, when you just tell yourself, don't think about that, what are you going to do? You're going to think about it. But God has given humans the ability to choose the direction of our thoughts. And if we just tell ourselves, I shouldn't think about that, I'll give you an example. Let's say you're trying to lose weight or something like that. And you're at church, and they have all a bunch of, I don't know how it is here, but in America, it's like the dessert table at potluck is like, it's like there's just all these things there, just crazy. And so people go up, and it's like they get a plate with all kinds of different desserts, right? And so, and this is not so good, but you're just so tempted, and there's all these things. And so people now let's say you have your plate of desserts, but then you're just like, you look again, and there's still a whole bunch more there, right? And you're like, man, I shouldn't have any more. I've had enough. I'm already full, but man, that chocolate cake over there. No, I shouldn't eat it, man. I shouldn't eat that chocolate cake. It's still there, though. No, I shouldn't even think about it, right? Don't think about that amazing, sweet chocolate cake. What am I thinking about? I'm thinking about chocolate cake, right? Now, telling yourself, don't have the cigarette. Don't go to that porn website. Whatever it is, you understand what I'm saying? You just tell yourself, don't do that. What are you thinking about? You're thinking about your temptation. And we discovered that quotation that says, never forget that thoughts work out actions, repeated actions form habits, and habits form character. So you try to tell yourself, don't think that. I shouldn't even think about that. As you tell yourself that, you're thinking about it. And those thoughts, as you continue to say, don't think about cigarettes, don't think about it, you're thinking about it, and thoughts work out actions. Repeated actions form habits, and habits form character. But if we go to God in His Word, we go to the promises of Scripture, and instead of dwelling on the sin, we say, Father, you said. You said in 1 Corinthians 10:13, there has no temptation taken you, but such as is common to man. But God is faithful, who will not suffer me to be tempted above that I am able, but will with the temptation also make a way to escape that I may be able to bear it. Father, you said, you promised that you can make a way of escape that I can overcome this temptation. Father, I'm trusting in you. Now, what am I thinking about? Thinking about God. I'm thinking about His Word. And as we are thinking on God and His Word, those thoughts will turn into new actions. They'll become a new habit, and it will be a new characteristic of who we are. Does that make sense? God wants to give us that victory and experience. I'm going to close with a study they did on monkeys. They took some monkeys. They put them in a cage, and at the center of the cage, they had a pole. At the top of the pole, they put what we think of as monkeys' favorite food. What do you think that would be? They put some bananas, right? And they put them up at the top there, and what would the monkeys do? Obviously, they would scurry up the pole and grab the bananas, but the scientists had a plan. And I don't know who funded this study, but the scientists sat there with something like a fire hose. And when the monkeys would start scurrying up the pole, they would turn on the hose and shoot them off the pole. Like, where did these guys come up with this, right? Like some sadistic scientists, mad scientists, you know? And so they did this, and then the monkeys try again, and they shoot them off the pole. And then they try again, and they shoot them off the pole. And they did this over and over and over and over, and monkeys are not stupid. Sooner or later, the monkeys decided, guess what? We're not climbing that pole anymore. We know what happens when you climb the pole. So they got to the point where they wouldn't climb the pole no matter what happened. They just wouldn't climb it anymore. And so the bananas were there, but they wouldn't climb the pole. So what happened was they took out one of the monkeys and put a brand new monkey who'd never been in there. And so what did the new monkey do? Starts to climb the pole. Well, as he wanted to climb the pole, another monkey ran up and grabbed him and pulled him back down. He's thinking, what? I'm just climbing. I'm going to get the bananas, you know? And so he tries climbing again, and another monkey grabs him and pulls him down. And they pull him down, and they pull him down. And after a while, he learns, guess what? You don't climb the pole. Then they stuck another one in there, and another, and they kept removing the old ones and putting new ones in. And finally, they had gotten to the point where they came to the last monkey that was in the cage who had been shot off with the fire hose. They removed him and put a brand new monkey in, and as the brand new monkey came in, he starts to scurry up the pole to get there, and as he's scurrying, guess what happens? They pull him back down. And they pull him back down, and they pull him back down, and they have no idea why they're pulling him back down. You understand? They have no idea why he is to stay down from there. They just know that's what you do. Does that make sense? And I fear sometimes we can do that with things like culture. There's good aspects of culture, for sure. But there are also some negative things. Like maybe you come from a family that just puts you down all like you're stupid, you'll never make it anymore. And why do they do that? Right? Maybe because their parents did it to them, their parents did it to them. Whatever it is, you understand what I'm saying? And so maybe sometimes we could even do that in church. And I don't think by and large most churches are that way. I don't mean that. But sometimes we could do that to each other even in church. We can keep each other down. But we are actually, especially as we are seeking to overcome, we need to lift each other up. God wants to give us the victory. We can actually encourage each other rather than tearing somebody down who's struggling with some addiction, some bad habit, whatever it is. We can actually encourage each other and we can build each other up. We can tell our friends, hey, I want to pray for you. I see you're struggling with that. Hey, man, I want to be here for you. I want to pray for you. We can store up some Bible verses together. We could challenge each other. Hey, do you know your text? We can do this, and we can claim them together from time to time. And friends, God can give us the victory. Let's close with prayer. Heavenly Father, I pray that we would become people who would encourage each other. Lord, in stressful times, we could be a brother or a sister to those who are there. Father, I pray that you would give us the victory through our Lord Jesus Christ. Just as these men, these soldiers who had been tormented and physically abused, found strength through their connection to you and by claiming Bible promises, so too may we be connected to you through your word. We thank you for your love. In Jesus' name, amen.